Allergies tonight. Okay, so we're at like 33, 34. Should be, I think the turns are split fairly well, like 16 by 17, so nothing, it shouldn't be too overwhelming, but it's still a nice seating, you know what I'm saying? One thing, we have a strawberry allergy, which presents problems for main dessert. And we have a lot of birthdays, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think like 6 or 7 birthdays. And we have a raw protein version, which is raw fish. So we can come up with a plan for that. It's nice. Uni is a problem, so it like is what it is. I'll look at it, maybe we just go without, or maybe I'll turn it into something else, like I don't know. With the dessert stuff, make sure you take the time to like gather everything. Like, I think you need to get to a place where like you are counting and organizing it for like how you bring it up, and that way you like know what's up here, you know how much you have, you know what I'm saying? I'm obviously here to help set up, but I don't really deal with like the last bites and things like that. Like I don't want to run around for that, but I help you with all the table food. Saturday, so obviously Saturday we try to do a little deep clean. Tonight, this has been nice and empty. Let's keep that up. Making sure you communicate on where you're at in the day. Busy, baby.
Hello everybody, welcome to Starter Motivation. I am your host, Jacoppo Balderrama, but you can call me Jaco. I'm here and I'm extremely excited with the one, the only Chef Charlie Mitchell. Charlie, thank you for joining us. I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man, but
of course, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, once again, we find ourselves here in your wonderful restaurant, Clover Hill. What a beautiful, aesthetic, woody place. I really like I told you earlier, the sound of the cracking of the wood and all of that. It's nice and cozy. Was it a joint effort to put this together? Is it your vision, or how does this work right here?
Well, actually, this place, Clover Hill, was open by the original ownership, and I think they founded the space in 2018. They got the lease. They opened it for the first time in 2019. Different chef, different team of people, and I was first introduced to the restaurant then, right? And so a lot of the layout in here is still the same from then. You know, a lot of the brick, the wood, and the like vintage kind of vibe is here. So that was already set by like Clay, first time around, who still operates the restaurant with me today. Then once I came in, and we wanted to kind of make the restaurant something new, like a new version of itself, more focused on dinner, you know, focused on fine dining. Then we started changing a lot of things, you know, new tables, new chairs, new plateware, new wine glasses, some kitchen enhancements and things like that. And then we started to merge the new vision with like kind of what the old vision was to kind of create this new version of what we think fine dining gets together. Okay,
so you had a layout pretty much, and then you're slowly putting your thoughts and all that into it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like I always felt like first time around coming here, I felt like the space had a special feeling to it. You know, although it was more of a brunch restaurant the first time around, I still felt like it had a nice vibe that you didn't get a lot, especially in Manhattan. You know, so I felt like it had a nice, like, good Brooklyn vibe to it.
Yeah.
So I felt we could expand on that, right? Like I felt it could, you know, we kind of felt like, why can't this be a fine dining restaurant? You know, some people felt like it felt like a cafe the first time around.
Yeah.
And we really want to like challenge that feeling. It would be like, this can be a very high-end experience if you want it to be, you know?
You want chill.
Yeah.
Exactly. I like that vibe. So we find ourselves in Brooklyn Heights. Let's go back, that kid from Detroit, man. How was it? How was Charlie as a kid? What were your interests? What were you like?
I don't know. I don't remember. I mean, as a kid, I mean, I think I was like your average kid. You know what I mean? Like I think it was all the same, right? Like growing up, I had a decent sized family. You know, was very family oriented, very close with the family, very close with my mom. I grew up single mom. You know, close with my grandparents, uncles, cousins, right? So that was like the I guess like the nucleus of the family growing up. And you know, I think we were just around a lot of food. You know, like I always say I grew up in a very like type A kind of like Black American family, to where we cooked for every reason possible. You know, good, bad, happy, sad. We were just always cooking and always eating. You know?
Go.
And then, you know, I'm the oldest of three brothers. You know, so I feel like at a decent age, I had to kind of start learning how to be the big brother, you know, in a good way, you know what I mean? So I think I like matured a little bit faster than some of my peers around me.
Okay.
But I was still a knucklehead, you know. I grew up in an environment to where, like, you know, I didn't take school very serious, nothing like that.
Like, no,
video games, hanging out, you know, that typical teenage boy stuff where you're just like, man, I don't know what I'm doing.
Exactly.
Figuring it out, and I just think, you know, as I grew, I finally grew into like wanting to be somebody eventually. But I think, Detroit and a kid, I was just like on a playground, like
Heck
most kids,
yeah.
just like using life as a playground for most of my childhood.
So, in Detroit, and I know Detroit has been a big influence also not only in your life, but as a country in music and all that. What would you be jamming out when you were like a teenager? What was some of you, maybe till this day you still jam to the same thing, but what is some of the music that you grew up with, and what is your favorite food?
Well, so music, honestly, I got influence from music from like my grandfather and my parents, right? Because, which is very different eras of music, but like my grandfather would, pick me up, take me to school a lot. So he would be playing a lot of like soul, funk, R&B,
Heck yeah.
a lot of like, oldie but goodie kind of music. So that is really the foundation. And that's what I listen to. 80% of the time I'm listening to like old school music, Motown kind of vibe. And then my parents were a lot younger, so like my dad may pick me up playing Jay-Z. My mom would pick me up playing like, I don't know, Lil Kim or Shantae Moore or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of grew up having like seeing all the sides of like what I felt like, black music and culture was.
Okay.
And then that kind of translated to like me being willing to learn all avenues of it, but I think now like even the music in the dining room we play, I do the playlist here and it's a lot of like, I can sometimes go back to some music in the 70s to now playing some like modern day rap now to kind of like mix it up because like I think, food, wine, and music are for me very intertwined. Like I need all three, you know what I'm saying? Whenever I'm like in a good vibe and cooking, right?
Heck yeah.
As far as like favorite food, like I don't know if I have one, to be honest.
Oh, just appreciate food overall, huh?
Yeah, I mean, like anybody at home, I eat. It's like a routine, right? Like you're eating, I don't know. I'm using the air fryer these days. Chicken wings and fries are like a good go-to, But like at home, I don't really have a favorite meal, favorite food. Something very simple. If I had to pick one thing, it's like maybe like rice, fish.
Oh, really?
Chicken.
Okay.
Yeah, I like things I eat a lot, And then, but professionally, like, very inspired by like seafood, vegetables. That's like the nucleus of like how we design the menu here at the restaurant.
Like we spoke before, like, and already, I was a former chef, and you get this question a lot. I bet, or you get told this a lot. I bet when you're at home, you cook really fancy meals, right? And then it's the total opposite, right? We just want something quick, something delicious, and then that's it.
Yeah, when I'm cooking at home, it's like the goal is like how fast can I be done? That's like the goal. Like how fast can I do this, so we can get on the couch as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
But and you have your chef flair, so I make it taste good very fast. And there are people like, how did you make this? But like,
How seasoning.
I don't want to spend 6 hours making a dish, intricate mise en place like I do at work. Like, no, I'm not trying to do that.
Exactly. Friends growing up, they're like, oh, Jaco, I bet you put. Nah, bro.
No, yeah.
Nah.
And I love being cooked for. Like maybe that's like the irony of like as a chef, like, I love when somebody else makes me something to eat. Like, so we can go out to eat, or I can go over to someone else's house for dinner and like sign me up. Like that's very ideal.
For me, throughout my career in the kitchen, for me, it was the ultimate sign of like nurture and respect.
Right.
Like whenever somebody says, look, it might not be Michelin, ironically, Michelin Star meal, but here you go, I made it because I care about you.
Yeah.
Do you have that look on somebody cooking for you too? Like, oh man, they love me.
Exactly, right? Because that's how I was introduced to food, right? Is that somebody cooking for you because they want to like, nourish you or make sure you had a warm meal or because they care, right? And so that's how I look at food in general, right? Like I'm very thankful to eat, like we all should be, right? Like you should never take that for granted, right? So if somebody takes 20 minutes or 2-3 hours to make you a home cooked meal, especially in their home, you should be very grateful. And I'm always gonna eat it, Salt and hot sauce can fix anything, right? Like it can only be so bad, right? Like people get nervous now, and I get that a lot now, and I kind of hate it when people are like, "I know it's not what you was." Like, I don't even eat the food I cook. Like I do, like I taste everything every day, but it's not like I come here and eat a tasting menu every day.
Yeah,
like that's not my life.
Sorry to make it bad for you, but no, a chef doesn't eat each and every entree. Like sometimes you see in some shows, you taste the sauces, you check for consistency.
Yeah, all the components, everything that's going into the dish, we eat every day, but you're not eating the like final plated dish every night, Like you eat a version of it,
And for those wondering, well, how do you, sometimes when you need to make an adjustment or want to have an idea how to taste the final dish, you make like a little improv one, right? Like you throw almost everything together, kind of. You taste it, right?
Yeah, make a small one. So this restaurant is very different from the restaurants I've been in before. We have like large teams. Like our R&D process is not very typical to most restaurants, but you have to trust your instinct sometimes, right? Like, and taste everything, make it. I have a thing I say here where it's like the more you make it, the more you taste it. Yes. So that's why you make things multiple times a week, every day. Some things every day, some things every other day. That way, the more that repetition, we get muscle memory of how you make it, and you constantly making sure it's right. You know what I mean? And eventually, you can look at it like that's wrong. Like you can tell like that's not right. And then we like to catch everything during the day. So that way, once we're in service and guests are here, like we know we're putting out the best version of it.
Of course, sometimes you don't have the time, right? You're like into service, you're in the weeds, as we call it, right? Weeds term definition, whenever a crowd hits the fan. Right. Like everything's going, you hear the tickets, Right. But anywho, so Charlie, you obviously were influenced by your immediate family, your mom being a single mom and done a great job, raised a wonderful individual. One of the kindest, coolest people ever, so. I reached out to Charlie. Charlie was so nice, was so cool. Hey, yeah, come on, let's do it. Took a little while because a lot of things going on. But with that being said, Grandma. I know Grandma, just like that dad, all award-winning whole fried bass that she prepared for you. Oh, wow. And I heard the story. So can you tell us a little bit about that? What is this bass about? What did she throw in there? What was the magic?
Well, honestly, I think like, it's like nostalgia, right? It's like any memory, right? Like everybody in my family cooks because that's like, Detroit's not the biggest city in Rosa. Most people cook at home. Most people eat at home, right? So it was that I spent the most time in her kitchen, right? And maybe it was things that like she would like to eat that like my grandfather wouldn't like to eat. So there were things that like we would eat together or whatever. You know what I mean? So I think like the bass was like a symbol of something to me as a kid that was like no one, to me, I feel like nobody was eating or cooking like this. It was like a whole fried fish. The bones are in it. It's kind of like, it's kind of rustic. You're kind of like eating with your hands. I'm like, yo, it was like fun, but kind of weird. And also it felt very like chefy to me at a young age. So that's why it was so like inspiring, I guess, because I felt like it was something I wouldn't eat at home with my mom or with my dad, or the kids at school aren't eating like this, you know what I mean? So it was just like fun, and it was really simple. Like when we fry fish, we fry it with just like cornmeal. That's it. And we used to actually eat it with hot sauce and mustard, which is
really.
I know it sounds weird, but it's a really good combination.
Oh God, I have to try that.
Yeah.
I think it's hot sauce, but I never heard mustard.
Yeah, hot sauce.
Just plain mustard. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. And really, I love this story because it hits home for a lot of people, and I really want to just take a moment and say that. Never underestimate the power of something prepared with love, right? Especially in a kid, right? Yeah. Like that memory is a core memory. It's like forever, right? So to this day, run a kitchen, and I bet you still think back to those moments. So.
Yeah, exactly, right? Which is good for like the connection with the food, right? Like I think all chefs, or in my opinion, at least great chefs, in my opinion, like it's hard to. But you don't think it's going to be hard, but once you start doing it, it's hard to like maintain that connection with the food because there's so much other shit going on, right? Like maybe it's like food costs and labor costs, and it's slow, and the trash didn't get picked up, or the oven is broken, all these things. But at the end of the day, like our craft, our values, like the craft and how we create food and our connection with the food. And I think those having, at least for me, for sure, having those memories to like the reasons why I started doing it, those memories are important to keep. Because that's what's going to get you out of bed at 8 a.m. to come in here and like, get to it and work a 16-hour day, right? Is that knowing that you do it for the love of cooking. That's it, really.
And that's important that you said, because it kind of has your anchor, right?
Exactly.
And your inspiration, motivation. With family being, an important part in, at least in your personal journey, do you definitely believe that and I'm just gonna start saying that nobody has this, and I call it a luxury. Not everybody has the luxury to having a positive family member influence in your life, right? Like a lot of people don't have that. Mm-hmm. But with the wonderful situation that you grew up in, and your mom, just picking up the slack and saying, "I got this. I got my boys." I know that you have two brothers, right? So, what do they think of Big Bro?
I don't know.
What do
I
they
mean-
mean to you?
I mean, I think it's different, right? Because I took a big risk, right? Like I left home. I moved to New York City in 2016,
Okay.
and they were still fairly young, right? So my youngest brother is 11, and my other brother is 18, going on 19, right?
Okay.
So I left home 7 years ago. So they were fairly young. So for me, as a big brother, it was a risk, right? Because you're like, man, like if you leave now, you're gonna like miss some high school years. You're gonna miss some of these moments that you could have had. It's a big risk, right? But I felt like the value that they would have to see me go out and at least try to chase a dream would make up for everything. Because I don't feel like I had that, And I think in a place like Detroit and our community, like, you look up to certain crowds of people, it's like a cliche, right? People say, looking up to rappers, drug dealers, or basketball players, whatever. But there's so many careers that you don't think about that you can do in this world just because you've never seen anybody else do it, or you haven't seen anyone do it who looks like you, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it was like, I just want to show them that it's okay to like go after something and try something different, right? And be somebody that they could see, try something, right? Just for them to be like, my brother lived in New York, became cool, right? They can tell their friends at school and stuff that my brother lived in New York, and they get excited about that. And even like now that it's finally like, it seems like I'm like arrived, right? Michelin Star, James Beard nomination, things that they're now like, wow, like it worked, And now like my little brother's like, he goes to college out of state, which sounds normal, but most kids don't want to leave the nest. They want to stay home. They want to stay close to family. But I think me doing what I did showed him like, oh, it's cool. I can leave Detroit. I can go away to college. And like my other little brother would probably follow in those footsteps as well, right? So motivating them was a very high priority for me. And right now I think it worked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It did, definitely
it's working.
did.
It's working now, because when you got somebody close to you that you can look up to, like it makes all the more difference, right? Instead of looking up to somebody who's just on TV or in a magazine, right? Like, so I can be that for them and also be a resource, right? Be like, hey, this is how I did it. This is what you should do. This is what I didn't do, and what you should do to not make the mistake that I made, right? And because we're closer in age, they understand the language opposed to like some OG who's like 60, like.
No, youngin, come on, youngin.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Like,
they seem out of touch, right?
They don't click, right?
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
But I'm more in touch, so it works right now. But you did have to sacrifice those years, and like it was what it was. But I think we're making up for it now.
Well, definitely, and in the moment, we hear you say it now, and I know a lot of people watching, they hear you say that, but we understand it in the moment. It feels, I don't want to say endish of the world kind of thing, but you're tearing yourself out of your family. You almost feel a little guilty at times, like,
yeah, for
like,
sure.
Am I being selfish?
Yeah.
But it's what's required on chasing a dream, and that's the hardest thing for people to understand. You're gonna have to do the most uncomfortable things that may even seem a little bit selfish, or people. I know people told you, hey, why are you doing that? You live in a big city already. You can find a job here, XYZ.
Yeah.
So I think you stating that I did it for a bigger purpose, sometimes even bigger than me, to serve as an example as well, is very important.
Yeah, I think that's something that, it is hard, but it's important, right? And especially for me, which I felt like, what you'll hear is very commonly spoke about in like certain communities, or even just not even your community, but even if it's your family and your lineage, right? If you're trying to like break a cycle or like start a new trend in your family, like people need to understand that there's certain things you have to do, right? And for me, that it still is a goal of mine, right? Like if we're gonna create wealth, like within the immediate family, like within my household, maybe it's my mom, my brothers, my fiance now, etc., her family, right in that circle, like somebody has to do something to do it, right? So the goal is like, well, how do you do that? And like, if you're focused on doing it, you may miss a couple birthdays, you may miss a couple holidays, but like if it works in 10, 15 years, you can be like, well, this is why.
Why did it?
I may have missed your 8th birthday, but now I'm here on your 16th birthday. And it's hard to explain when kids are young or even when families growing old, but like, hopefully if it makes sense, it makes sense, you know.
Well, Charlie, grandma influenced you into your intro to the kitchen world, as we say that. But any other people in your life that were your heroes or people that you look up to, like, man, I want to be just like this person, like, man.
Nothing, no one that I really know personally, right? Like I think I didn't know much about the chef world, right? Like I think my only intro to chef world was like home life, you know, Food Network and shit and TV. And then once I got into like my first fine dining kitchen, you know, that was in the suburbs of Detroit, like they, you know, one of my great friends and my first chef, they introduced me to what like the fine dining world was, and like great chefs, you know, Michelin Stars and James Beard and cookbooks and all of these things. And then once I got introduced to that, I started to look up to certain chefs, right? Like chefs in this city, you know, like Daniel Hume, Eric Lepere, Danielle. Like I look up to chefs who, and also other career paths too, but mainly chefs who've done it for a long time, or even music artists who've done it for a long time, or sports figures, or artists, right, who've figured out longevity, right? Like they have a craft or a skill, but they've been good at it for at least 10, 20 years, 30 years, maybe 40 years. And you're like, damn, like how, right? Like how do they do it?
Level,
what do
right?
they do? So those are the people who I look up to or like look at, you know, like, okay, what are they doing that they've maintained this for so long, right? And how do I maintain this for so long, right? Because this can't be it, right? Like we've had a great year and a half, but like I can't retire.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
sure.
I didn't hit the Mega Millions, or like I still got gas in the tank. Most importantly, right? Like I'm still here, inside of what I do for a living. So, seeing people with longevity is what motivates me the most, right? Like, okay, if I'm gonna do this for the next 20, 30 years, like how do I stay healthy, stay focused, stay inspired, all those things.
Okay, and talking about staying inspired. How were you inspired through school? Like, were you a good student? Were you a bad student? Did you like school? Did it fail you?
Did it fail me? No, I think it was a very typical story, right? Like school to me was just fun, right? Friends, right? You leave the house, you go hang out with your friends for 8 hours, and you go back home or whatever, right? So
yeah.
I don't think I was a very serious student at all. I know I wasn't, but like looking back, I'm like, oh, if I would have took school a little more serious, I probably would have been. But it probably would have led me somewhere else, right?
Yeah,
so like you can't really live with that regret. Like, who knows? If I'd have been a straight A student, I probably would have. Like my first thing was I was probably going to go to school for finance. That's what I thought. If I didn't cook, I was going to go to school and be like a finance major. So I'd probably be like, I don't know, some really rude finance bro living in the West Village. Like I don't know, right? But it's just like, well, this led me here now, right? But I feel like I learned enough, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, more importantly, I learned how to, like, think for myself, you know, like, listening to people, you know, so. But, yeah, school was school, you know. I did 1 year at a regular college, went to culinary school for about 6 months. And then I started working. So then I stopped going to culinary school.
You just cold turkey, just like, bye.
And then I just learned it all on the job.
Were you like, so I'm going to give you this cash, but I can learn better on my own and over here? Or did you look at it like that?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't hard to be convinced. I think my first chef might have been like, listen, you're going to take out a bunch of loans, go to culinary school, and then you're going to come here, and you're still going to start at the bottom regardless.
True.
So it was a very simple, at least for me, it's a very simple decision, right? Like culinary school doesn't prepare you to like be a sous chef or be a chef.
Well,
you're going to come out and you're going to be a commis, and you're going to peel the vegetables and take out the trash for minimum wage. So, and then you're going to figure out how to pay back all those loans. So for me, I'm like, well, if culinary school is 2-3 years, I can just put my head down and learn for the next 2-3 years. And I'll probably be at the same point as this person coming out of culinary school anyways, if not further, right? So it was a very easy decision to make.
No brainer. I mean, you said, you put it on the table, I'm going to go and get the experience. So Charlie, how was that moment first stepping into like a highly functioning kitchen? Like your first steps, you're like, what did you think? Like, what am I doing? That it wasn't intimidating? And what was some of the thoughts in your head when you were like in that position? Like, here, peel this whole box of potatoes. And you're like, oh man.
Well, I think it's two sides to it, right? I think it was like the first time it happened in Detroit, and then the first time it happened in New York City. Those things were very different, right? Okay. So when I got my first job in Detroit, when I knew it was like a real kitchen, it was actually at first it was a relief, right? Because I had a couple jobs that I thought were nice restaurants, so I didn't know any better, but they were like high-end bar and grills. And I'm like, I hate this place. Like it just, like the culture of the kitchen was the more important to me than like how fancy the food was.
Okay.
You know. So when in Detroit, it was more of a relief. I knew I didn't know shit, and I knew I sucked, but at least it was like it was clean. That they were like professional. They were like, yes, chef, and it was like they had their own knives. You know. So I was like, oh, this is dope. Like this is where I want to be. And then like I had to learn and I had to catch up. But it was like a relief. And then when I got my first job in New York, I was focused on like once I ran that course, I was like, okay, I need to go to a big city. I need to learn. I need to take the next step. And once I got my first job in New York, then I was like, oh shit, I don't think I can do this. You know, then I was like, yo, like, what did I get myself into? You know,
what am I doing, bro?
Because it was just,
Was it overwhelming?
It was serious.
Was it overwhelming?
Yeah, at first, yeah, it was serious. It was real serious. And it was, you know, I had to shave every day, you know, like, you're working 14 hours, the chef was throwing food away. You know, it was really like, yo, like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, I don't know if this is for me. But, you know, it didn't necessarily scare me away. It was just like, okay, like, you got to work even harder. You know, you have to, like, this is what it is. Like, this is what you asked for. You left Detroit. You're in New York City. Let's figure it out. But it was definitely hard. Like, I don't like selling the idea that it wasn't hard.
No.
Like, it was definitely hard, you know, and it took a lot of discipline and a lot of big emotional roller coaster, you know. But, you know, it made me who I am today, right?
Yeah. And we were talking about it just before we started. The kitchen is unforgiving.
Yeah.
She don't care.
Yeah.
Where you come from, who your parents are not. You're gonna get burned. That's number one. You're gonna get cut. That's number two.
Yeah.
And number three, depending on your luck, you're gonna get like they're gonna put you in a spot where they're gonna make you feel like you don't know, not even how to tie your shoelaces, right? Depends where you work at.
For sure. I mean, when I moved to New York City, I've been cooking I was a sous chef in Detroit. Mm-hmm. So I think I was cooking 3 and some change, maybe 3 years, some change. And when I got here, they were like, you don't know shit. They're like, you can't cook. Go clean the lettuce. And I was like, yo, I was a sous chef like a month ago. And they're like, yo, go clean the lettuce, sweep the floor, and strain this for me right now. And I was just like,
we chef.
I was like,
we chef.
I was like, yo, like, what's going on here? But I didn't know how to cook their way. Right? And I think that's what some chefs, some cooks, you gotta learn. Like, every restaurant has a different way. You know, it may be this is how they make the sauce, this is how they make the puree, this is how they store this, and you have to learn their way. And I didn't know it. So they were right. Like, I had to learn their way. So I had to learn it from how they put things away to how they cook the fish. Like, it all had to make sense. And
fit their system.
Yeah, and at first it didn't. So it was some growing pains there, but we figured it out.
Yeah, it's like, you know where I'm going with this. It's kind of like blanching a vegetable, right? Blanching a vegetable, you boil it up to a certain point, and then you shock it in ice water to preserve the nice, beautiful color, because in service, you're still gonna hit it, right? Aromatics. But it's like that effect, like you're over here in Detroit, and now they throw you to the boiling water in New York, and you're like, whoa, hold on. What do you mean I can't cook? I've done it like for 4 years already.
Yeah, exactly.
Dang.
Yeah.
And I can share that a little bit. I mean, I worked at this one country club to do my apprenticeship, and it was almost that same approach. And I was in culinary school still. So in my mind, I knew I don't know much, but hey, I'm a culinary student.
Yeah.
I got my whites on. Come on, I'm a chef too. Oh man, they humbled me quick.
Yeah.
They're quick with it.
Yeah, they will. Yeah.
And I remember that I picture myself like, okay, the first thing they're gonna tell me is like, okay, we're gonna sous vide this, or we're gonna butcher this. Hey, no, I need this whole box of potatoes peeled, and then put them in this bucket in the water.
Yeah.
I was like, all right. After that, I got a special task: 2 hotel pans full of diced carrots. I was like, how long is this gonna go for? When do I get to put the flowers and the oil at the end plate? Right? I never got to do that, but
but you know, eventually you will. Like, eventually, if you stick with it, you will, right? If you become a good soldier, eventually you'll be able to lead the pack, right? And
true.
I learned that very early on because I didn't have a choice.
You get to New York, culture shock. They treat you like you're on your day one in the kitchen, which obviously you weren't. So throughout your journey, you start absorbing and understanding that, wow, every kitchen has a system. There's a hierarchy. There's everything the way they want it. As a young chef, what kept you driving forward and moving forward? You already made the trip. You couldn't go turn around and say, you know what? My feelings are hurt. I'm done. So what kept you moving forward as a young chef?
Well, I mean, number one, like I started the journey, so I felt like I was have to complete it, right? So I felt like I made a goal, I made a plan, and I felt like, we have to figure out how to reach the end goal, right?
Yeah.
So that's number one. And number two, I'm very competitive, right? So in the kitchen's good, like friendly competition, right? Like I was never that cook who would like sabotage another cook, but you're motivated by like your sous chefs ahead of you, your chefs ahead of you. You want to be like them, you want to learn from them, right? You want to like, oh, they do that so well. How do I do that, right? And that kept you going. And then understanding like I don't have a choice at the end of the day, right? Like for me, it was like, the cooking industry is very hard to navigate. It's very hard to know how you're going to be a chef. That moment, doesn't just show itself, right?
Yeah.
You have to take opportunities and make the right decisions. But, I felt like, well, I put all my eggs in this basket. Like I'm not going back to college. Like this is it.
Yeah.
And it has to work. So it was easy, right? Like it's easy at least to me, like it's easy for me to get up at 6 a.m. and get to work on time or 5 a.m. to get to work on time because you don't have a choice. Opposed to maybe some people feel like they have options, right? They felt like, oh, if this doesn't work, I'll go do accounting, or if this doesn't work, I'll move back in with my parents, or if this doesn't work, I'll be a server or learn about wine. And for me, it was like, this is a one-way street. That's it, right? So there have been multiple, roadblocks, whether it was leaving Detroit or whether it was COVID or whether it was whatever, right? Like, but you just feel like, okay, well, we have to get to the other side of this, so it doesn't really matter, right? So it was able to keep me focused on like the work aspect. And then, like I said, like the food aspect, right? Being motivated is just about remembering why you're doing it and trying to really make sure you fall in love with like cooking and the ingredients and like being in touch and like learning and like having fun as well, which is very important. Like to me, like it has to be fun still.
Yeah.
Right? Because the moment it's not fun, it becomes like, I won't say like it becomes like work because it is work, but it can become a little like spiteful. I think sometimes,
I hear you. It's just like you need that little magic, right? That it comes with BS. Any job comes with any BS.
Yeah.
So.
It can be like me doing the dishes in high school, right? It was spiteful, right? My mom was like, go clean the kitchen. You're just like, ugh. So you like throw everything in the dishwasher. You don't rinse anything off, right? You just run the cycle and they come out all shitty.
Yeah.
And like you can't cook like that. Like you have to cook like, corny, but like cook with love or with fun, right? Because otherwise it's gonna come out like you didn't want to do it.
The crap, the whole show on the plate too.
Yeah, it's gonna show, right? Yeah.
So you go through your years, you hold different positions, you move up the kitchen, right? You go to sous, all that. So coming up from those fine dining establishments, how does this opportunity present itself where you are now running a kitchen?
It was very random, honestly. It was very random. It wasn't like this position wasn't like a natural part of my like trajectory. Right? It really wasn't. Like I was in DC. I came back to New York. I took a job. The job didn't work out. I was actually like completely unemployed. I want to say like the first time in my adult years. Right?
Oh, wow.
I had just left my job, and I remember telling my now fiance, like, listen, like I'm about to quit my job. Like, this is about to happen. Like I'm about to quit. Right? And,
you ready? Let's go.
And she kind of was like, okay, like go for it.
Whatever.
And I was just figuring it out. I think I took a vacation for the first time. Just trying to I was in between, like, okay, do I just, I never had the opportunity to work out the country.
Okay.
So I was trying to see what connections I had to kind of maybe get out the country and be like, fuck it, like, I'm just gonna go be a cook again. Like, start over.
Okay.
Like, I know I'm at this point, but I can still listen. Like, I'll just go be a cook and work, or do I go private, be a private chef? And so that's where I was at. I was either gonna cook or be a private chef. I wasn't looking for like head chef jobs or even sous chef jobs. Like I wasn't. I was kind of like turned off by it. And then like I said, Clay he reached out to me randomly one day, like, yo, Charlie, what are you up to? And I was like, well, actually, I'm not up to anything. I'm actually in between jobs. Like, what's up? You know, like, what's up? And he asked me to get coffee, and we got coffee, and we talked for, I don't know, an hour or two, and now we're here.
Really? So,
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, you know, this place had closed because of COVID, right? Like, COVID ruined the culinary world, right? So this place was closed because of COVID. He was trying to figure out how to reopen it. I was in between, a little uninspired, a little bit, you know, didn't know what I wanted to do. And we were just two people who knew we were capable of something. And we both needed, you know, I don't know, that right opportunity, right? I guess that makes sense. Well, he had the restaurant, and he was looking for somebody like a partner like myself to like complete the other half of it. And, you know, I was looking for like, if this opportunity was going to be right for me, then I would need to be able to express myself in the right way to even see if I could really do it, right? And we were just two people at the right point in our lives, and it just kind of happened.
Wow, over coffee, huh?
You know what I'm saying? Like, it was just like, you know, I'm in a tough spot, you're in a tough spot. Can we grind together and make something happen?
Wow.
And so far, so good.
Good, and it shows. So, over coffee, when you walked you finished our coffee, the 12-hour conversation, when you walked and got up and went back home, what was your first thought? Like, is this a sign of, hey, this is my shot? Like, what was going through your mind after you got settled and said, you know what, I'm gonna run this kitchen?
Like, immediately, I thought he was crazy. Like, I was like, he doesn't even know if I can cook or not. Like, he's fucking crazy. That was my first thought. My second thought, you know, I talked through it with my fiance, and I was just kind of like, these are my options, right? Like, you know, I had an opportunity of the country that would require me, like, further from family, further from friends. I was going to take her with me, whether she would admit that or not. She was definitely coming. And I was like, okay, I can go do that. And where does that put me on this initial plan? Because the plan has not changed. So if I go do that, does that get me to the next step in the plan? Or if I go do this, does it get me closer to the next step in the plan? And that was a decision, like, which is going to get me to this place faster? And I ended up choosing this one. Because I was like, well, this is still New York City. Like, people have a thing here where, like, Manhattan versus Brooklyn or whatever.
Yeah.
And, like, the dining scene and stuff. And, I mean, culturally, too, with the dining scene. And I'm like, okay, this place isn't smack dab in the middle of Manhattan, but it's still New York City. So if I could take this opportunity and make a splash in New York City, then, you know, anything is possible after that. And it worked. I mean, or it's working rather, right? Like, Brooklyn, you're on a Michelin guide, New York City, and you have a little spotlight, and like your talent gets recognized, and it's been the best case scenario now for all of us, you know, myself and Clay, you know, our partners. It's been best case scenario so far, right? So it was a tough decision. I think I sat on it. I think we might have met, and I think we sat on it for a month or so, maybe. Kind of just talking through it. Once I was open to it, and you kind of talk about, you know, negotiations, things like that. But eventually, it just felt like the right choice. And then once I accepted the job, I was completely terrified.
Because of the control now? Because of the responsibilities? What was scary about it?
I mean, the industry here is pretty serious, right? And like, at least inside of it, right? And the first thought I had was like, shit, who's going to work for me, right? Because I was a young chef. I had never done it before. I was like, who is going to work here? I didn't have anybody lined up, so that was like the first problem, you know? And just hired a bunch of people and just figured it out eventually.
I can really identify with what you just said. Because people would have asked, right? What restaurant did you run? What have you formed?
Yeah.
What did you build, right? And I know we were talking earlier, the same thing with what I'm doing here. A lot of times, okay, you want to speak, but yeah, so what have you done? And then, but you took that leap, right? This was your opportunity to build that and form your reputation, which it couldn't turn out any better. Now, as we all know, Clover Hill and you and your staff have earned a Michelin Star. Your for anybody watching who just by coincidence doesn't know, Charlie is the second African American chef in the whole U.S. to have a Michelin star and the only one in New York.
Yeah.
Bro. And I've seen other interviews because I do my research. Even people don't like to believe that I do.
Yeah.
And I know you've been asked this a lot of times, but you said that you didn't know the implications of that Michelin star and the stats. Now that I just mentioned that it came with it. Mm-hmm. So the moment you get told you have a Michelin star, the moment you get told you're the second one in the country and the first one in New York being a culinary mecca, bro, in the world, what did that feel like? What did you think?
Well, I mean, that night, it was so many, there's so many emotions and shit. So like, I didn't really take it in. I think I took it in. Like, I think somebody might have said it or told me that night, like maybe at like the after celebration or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was kind of crazy. Then I took it in the next day, and I also still thought it was kind of crazy. But like once the dust settled, I just felt like, on one hand, it's crazy as far as like representation and things like that, mm-hmm. and like if people, how could it have been so long? So it is crazy in that way, and it was also a little bit crazy in like feeling like people are like looking up to you. You know what I mean? And I think for me, it was just about like after the dust settled, just kind of embracing it, right? Like embracing that people younger, or either I can motivate people that's young cooks, no matter what color they are, that looking at, okay, this guy's 30 years old, Michelin star in Brooklyn, that's motivating. Or people of color who like now have somebody who's done it that looks like them, and in this kind of city, I just embrace it, and I'd be, I'm just excited to be a resource and represent and, move. I don't know if I can open any doors or move into space any kind of way to like open doors for others. It's like, it's awesome, right? You can't like shy away from it. I don't necessarily wear it on my sleeve, like,
yeah,
like a lot, but
Michelin star clip right here.
Yeah, but whenever like cooks or chefs reach out to me, like I may not get back to them like immediately, but eventually I do, and I'll just tell them like what it is. Any advice I can give, I give it.
That's great, and I really take this moment because when I went to culinary school and I cooked, I left it. I couldn't do it, bro. Like I don't have no shame in saying it. I do it. I still get a little crap for it from my friends. I still have a lot of chef friends, mm-hmm. but and I'm gonna tell you with all due honesty, because my wife knows it. Being able to sit here, being able to share your story, and a little tiny piece of my heart, it feels like I touched the Michelin world. So I want to thank you for that. It's the closest I'll ever get to, but it does feel. And I do see myself reflected in some particular way when I seen you. And I already told you how I came across you. I'm on YouTube. I watch a lot of cooking videos. They said, hey, look, watch this one. And the moment I seen you, I see your staff. Everybody in your staff would look like somebody who would be my friend, who my boy, who we grew up together. So that really struck a chord in me, and that's what made me reach out to you. But I just want to say how proud I am, not only of you, but of your kitchen stuff. Because I know it takes a team to make this engine work and run. Yeah. And I know it requires not only sacrifice from you, but from them too.
Yeah, it does. And that's why I like, for me, is like, I mean, like the chef is the chef, right? Like you can't have a fine dining restaurant without a chef, right? You just can't. But it does take a team. Like I don't do everything myself, right? Like I'm not that. I can't, right? I only have 2 arms. It's only 24 hours in a day. Yeah. So it's very important to me that the cooks, like how we run the kitchen, like the cooks, they work a lot. Mm-hmm. They do a lot of work. But it's so that they can feel involved, Like I want them to feel a part of it, right? Like I didn't do this shit by myself. Like you made the sauce, you made the puree, you broke down the fish, you made the dessert, or you cut the herbs, whatever. Like it's a team sport, it's a team effort. And I think, in some large restaurants, you can feel very disconnected from the food and from like you achieve something. But I think I love small kitchens, small restaurants, so that the cooks need to understand that they're a part of this too. And I think in that moment that they did, and I think they still do. I still think they still feel very like, involved, because like they cook the food here. Like yes, it may be my ideas or my recipes or my direction, but like they are very like they're learning how to be chefs, and they're very hands-on with the food and what we do here, and they contribute. Culturally as well, right? Because like having a great culture in a restaurant like this is also very hard. they don't teach you in culinary school.
Yeah, I know, right?
Like they don't teach you like how to build a culture, maintain a culture, and like how to problem solve properly. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? Like that's just something you just have to learn the hard way. You have to learn on your own. You know what I mean? Like, and that in itself is like one of the hardest parts. You know?
Exactly, and there's that people element, right? There's a difference between trying to solve something and then listening.
Yeah.
And I always say, a lot of times, and I used to have this problem. I used to listen to people for my turn to speak till they finish speaking, then I would jump in. But
Yeah.
I didn't even listen. My wife still tells me till this day, "Hey, I just said this." Oh man, dang, my bad. I was just waiting for you to finish speaking so I can say something. But you're right. Conflict management, I
Yeah.
call it. It's important because you can have all the problems, but if you have a good person that identifies the problems, but there's no solutions, all you're doing is creating problems.
Yeah, exactly. And then like that's true. And like the kitchen too is like you have to accept there's gonna be something going wrong every day. There's something going wrong every day, all day. It just is. So for me, it was like understanding that, learning that, and then learning how to react to certain things that need to be reacted to. You know, let some things just kind of ride because that's just what it is. And then you have to also learn when to still speak up and when to draw that line, right? Because in order to do what we're trying to do, you have to have that line. And that's really the difference, right? It's like discipline, honesty, and like what's the standard, what's the line, right? Like what's the point where it's like, listen, like, I'm not gonna yell at you about this, but like you gotta throw it away and start over, right? Like that line is like, for me as a leader, it was very hard to like draw, you know, because you know it doesn't feel good for me because I'm like, well, you gotta throw it away, start over. We're wasting time, we're wasting money, and then for them, they're like sad and like,
Dang,
you know,
should've just chewed me out, right?
right,
Yeah.
or whatever. So. But you know, we have a good. I think we have a good environment. I know you said you watched the Eater video, but I think it showed that it's not really a kitchen ran on fear. You know what I mean? That's not what I was looking for. It's more like, you know, ran on respect, whether it's for me or for the ingredients or for the restaurant, opposed to like, oh, I'm doing this just so I don't get screamed at.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's not.
Which is the old school way. Which you experienced that. I know you did.
That's how I came up, and it worked for me, but it doesn't work for everybody. Right. Like every cook can't move through that pressure. They can't think through that pressure.
I know.
So for the ones who can, great. And those you can be a little bit harder on. But the ones who can't, you're okay, how do I effectively communicate to this person that this sucks, right? And you have to like treat everybody different, but you know, and I think that's why we've become, you know, fairly successful, right? Because I don't need everybody in here to be like the best cook in the world. You just gotta be willing to listen and willing to learn and be a part of a team.
And part of being a good leader, and that's a really good trait that you have to you recognize how is this person learning versus this person, and this is how I have to bring it up to this person and teach it versus you could be. There's some people that you say, hey, no, the fillet don't zigzag it, clean sweep.
Right.
And other ones look, watch me, look.
Yeah.
You know, it requires a little more nurture and care, but
exactly.
That's a good quality. And leaders, a lot of leaders like that. A lot of leaders just believe that here's a dish, here's how I did it, go duplicate it, that's it.
Right. Yeah, and that's just not how, it wasn't how I came up, so I'm not gonna I know it worked for me, so I try to recreate that. And I think is a better way to learn how to cook. But it's also hard because I force them to think, so it's also hard.
That's good.
You know, it's not a restaurant to where it's here's a recipe, just follow it. You know, it's learn the nuances, learn how to think deeper than just what I want. You need to learn how to think about food so that when we leave here, the next place may have a completely different style of doing things, but you can think through what's going on. I think that's going to set them up to be better chefs, right?
Well, I like what you said. I'm teaching chefs, right? Future people that are going to run a kitchen,
of course,
and then that's so one of the things that's missing in leadership nowadays. Is not only the culinary industry, in many industries, in all industries, you're understanding the time and place that you're in right now, the position you're in, but you're giving them gems because you don't want them just to rely for every single question, every single thing on you. Open your mind. Here's how we approach this. This is why we played it the way we played it, and that's something that not many people do.
Yeah, they don't, but I mean, it's also you know, with this world, like a lot of chefs want people to work for them forever and all this kind of stuff. But for me, I'm very like, listen, they're not gonna work for me forever, right? They're young. Like my kitchen staff, they're young. They're gonna work here for a year, 6 months, a year probably on a great note, 2 years at best. Then they're out living their lives, right? And like, for me, it's important that I don't care. Like, you leaving is inevitable. But what I want is for you to leave and feel like you gain something from being here. And that's the most important to me, right? Like, you know, cooks don't make most money in the world. They're not lawyers, right? So for us as a restaurant, it's important to us that we invest into them. And it's like, well, it can't all be capital, you know what I mean? But it can also be like knowledge and skill sets and these things that we invest into them, opposed to just treating them like, you know, an asset or a chess piece on our plan, right? True. So that's important, you know, to me.
That's good, and that's what it brings up a good morale. So Charlie, you went into a little depth about what you believe, your philosophy in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. Now that you're a grown man, you have your own team. What motivates you, inspires you? I know you're gonna get married soon, so early congrats on that. But besides the kitchen, what are some of the things that now influence you and keep you going forward?
Like outside the restaurant?
Yes. Besides the beautiful missus.
I mean, at the end of the day, we all work because we have to, right? Like, that's just the reality, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, most of us do. I mean, so, you know, working is something that I felt like when I looked at work and I found when I chose cooking, it was something that I wanted to make sure that whatever I did for a living, not to say it's the most important thing in the world, I'm not saying it's the most impactful, but I want to feel like I had something to show for my work. You know what I mean? It's like when you go to school, like, what do you have to show for? Like, show your work, right? So, to me, that's what it was about. And I think what motivates me is like in the kitchen is that this work can translate to something that it can carry on in my family and my lineage, right?
Yes.
So,
okay.
Rather it's like, you know, maybe it's just through children or whatever, or maybe it's a sister, brother, cousin, whatever, right? Okay. But like if you can set up something that we can carry on and it can carry, and it can put, you know, the family in a good position, that's very motivating for me. You know, even if it's just like, you know, you have a bunch of chain restaurants. Maybe this leads to like a bunch of chain restaurants and they stay in the family. Like maybe it leads there, or maybe it leads to just like, you know, making some sort of history, or maybe it leads to allowing us to travel the world or whatever, right? So it's just about like, you know, what I do, you know, how can it open more doors for us, you know, as a family, right? And that's like, I think like the final version of it when it's all said and done, right? Okay. Like what did this do for us, right?
Exactly. So you're talking about this, it goes past beyond your generational, right? Mm-hmm. Influencing your family, helping, adding, and doesn't matter where or who, but ultimately benefiting your family. With that being said, what is a key takeaway that you might give to a young chef, to somebody who's watching right now? But and I like to say this because I'm just raw sometimes. Mm-hmm. There's somebody watching in a position where maybe they don't have enough funds, maybe they got kicked out of their house, maybe they're in a troubled neighborhood growing up, you know, coming from unfavorable conditions. What would you tell that young person or that person that is in that spot that is looking at you and saying, I want to cook professionally and I see myself through him?
I mean, I think it's very, very black and white, right? Like focus on the craft first, right? That's really where you should start with anything, right? Like focus on the craft first and really learn about food and really love cooking and really care about getting better at it. And if you do that and then you surround yourself, you put yourself in the right surroundings, around the right people, in the right environment, like you will progress, right? But like none of this happens without me like focusing on like how to cook food. Like that's the only reason we're here, right? That's the only reason Michelin acknowledges us, or James Beard, or it's the only reason why, you know, me and Clay's partnership has lasted so long. It's the only reason why this restaurant is busy on certain nights, you know, is that we cook really good food, you know? I mean, now we've added to the experience, you know, we have great wine, we have, of course, we have great service, we have a great ambiance, great music, but at the end of the day, if everybody leaves here and they don't have a good meal, you're gonna see less and less guests here.
Exactly. They don't
Right?
come back.
Overnight.
Right?
So for young cooks, I just tell them, that's what everyone who reached out to me, they're like, how do you get a Michelin star? I'm like, because I learned how to cook. Like, learn how to cook.
And they're like, man, that's messed up.
Yeah.
Look what it-
Learn
look-
about ingredients, different techniques, learn about former chefs, current chefs, right? Like learn, right? It's so, even now, like, I'm still sometimes ordering fish here that I've never broke down before, or I've never cooked before,
Okay.
right? Like, because I'm still trying to, like, learn, see what's out there. You know, I reach out to chefs who have 4 or 5 restaurants, and I'm like, how did you get that? How did you get there? You know, how did you cook that? Where'd you buy those plates from? Where'd you get those glasses from?
Oh, so you still do it to this day?
Yeah,
Okay.
of course, right? Because I'm still learning, right? Like, I'm young to most chefs, right? Like, I just turned 31, so a lot of these chefs that run this city are 45, 50, you know, so they
Deep
have
in the
all
game too,
yeah,
right?
they have all the game, so I'm still getting it from them, and young cooks should get it from people like me, right? And it's a journey, it's ever learning, right? Because, you know, the food, if you take it seriously, the industry is like anything, like fashion, you know, art, music, it's going to be trends, it's going to be, you know, certain demographics, you know, you have to find your position, right? So focus on the craft, and then later on figure out what exactly you want to do and how you're going to do it.
And it's great that you keep that mentality of always learning, right, and keeping yourself open and as a resource, like you said, not only to the people close to you, but people that reach out to you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Bro, I gotta admit something, and I've been telling this to my wife. You have to be. I don't want to offend people. You gotta be like the chef with the craziest swagoo that I've ever seen in my life, bro. Your dress game is on point, like from your kicks to your shirts to your pants to your everything. Just there's this swagger about you that, and it became, you know, in the background that we come from, cooking was always seen as cool.
Right.
Ever
Yeah,
since,
yeah. Of
and
course.
rest in peace, the great Anthony Bourdain, New Yorker.
Yeah.
He made it look like a superstar,
Yeah, he
right?
had the
And then
swag.
people before him,
Yeah.
slowly before him, they started doing the same thing. But just everything that the way you talk, the way you walk, how you do it, where does all this smoothness come from? Like whenever, even to how you set up around here, like is that your goal? Are you particular about how things should be done, not only here but also in the kitchen?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's ultimately like self-expression, right? Like, you know, I think coming to New York City, like Detroit, I mean, you're influenced by culture, number one, right? So everything is there, grounded in the culture. I grew up there. And coming here in New York, like this place where you can just really express yourself, whether it's like how you want to dress, how you want to walk, how you want to talk, like everybody's here for it, right? And so I think it allows you to kind of like blossom to this person that like, you know, like being the person that you think you are, like how do you start being that person? And I think that's something that I think about like a lot. And then when it becomes like leading the kitchen, it's like, okay, how could I lead this kitchen? Do I want to just act like this person that I'm not just for the sake of like looking like a chef?
Yeah.
Or do I want to be like, really be the chef that I want to be and really be myself and, you know, dress a certain way outside of work, behave a certain way inside of work, and listen to this kind of music and like still walk and talk this way and like really just allow myself to like really like grow. And that's what's important to me is that like I'm myself, right? And it doesn't show here, you know, you got the whites, you got the apron, because you're doing a job, you're a professional, but you know, when you see people outside of work, it's like I want to be like myself. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And still care about the things that I'm into outside of work, right? Like I grew up in Detroit and I grew up very much in hip hop culture. Like, of course I like fly shit. Like, why wouldn't I? Right? Like, that's what I was raised around. That's all I know, right? So I don't shy away from that. I just like embrace it. You know what I mean? And just try to, you know, I think in this world today, like people like to know who the chef is. Like, it's very, they like to know who we are and what we like to do outside of work and what things we're into. So I think it's important that we show that, right? So that people understand that we're more than just like 14 hours in a hot kitchen, you know. There's more to us than that, you know. And I think guests love that because, you know, you break down that like I feel like even back in the day, the guests used to fear the chef too. And I'm like, why do you fear the chef? Like, you don't work for him. You're just eating there. Like, you're like intimidated. And I like that. Like, you know, you should feel like, you know, I'm a person just like you. I'm just at work and you're like out to dinner. You know, that's the only difference, you know. So, yeah.
Would you ever, in the future, because I know that you have all your chef gear and your chef shoes, would you ever like be in your chef gear and then maybe with some designer shoes or what? The kitchen?
You know, some chefs do that. I don't think that's necessarily me. You know, like I'm really into like the kitchen swag. Like, I like having my non-slips. I like having my chef jacket on. Like I really like it. And I feel like it's like, you know, if you're going to play ball, right? Like you want to throw on the gear, throw the headband on, everything. So I like being in the kitchen, like in kitchen stuff. You know, I do. I joke about it a lot though, like gym shoes or like designer sneakers or something like that. You know, I'll probably just upgrade the watch one day. That'll probably happen.
Hey,
you know?
yeah.
I like the KCO, so I'll probably
a little retro look. It looks clean, man.
Probably upgrade the watch a little bit in a couple of years.
Good.
You know?
Are you one of those people that overspends on like kitchen swag? You're like, oh man, I shouldn't. Oh man, I went overboard.
I overspend outside of work, but in work I try to keep it. You know, I keep it very affordable, very modest. You know,
Good.
but I need a lot. You know, like I'm not a person like I need 5 days a week. I need 5 different pairs of pens, or I need you know 5 different chef jackets. You know, so that it can be. You want to still feel clean, even though we're doing such a gnarly job. Sometimes you want to still feel clean and crispy. You know.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Creating, then as we know, synergy in your kitchen. Everybody has like the trust to come to you and say, hey, chef, the XYZ, this doesn't sound right, doesn't smell right, doesn't taste right. I've noticed that your team is comfortable in it, and you said this is a kitchen and a team that functions on respect. And well, by what I've seen, not only behind the camera, but a few interactions here with your team, it's earned respect, not automatic, oh, he's my chef, that's it. With all that, what's next for you? What are some of your future plans? Is there something cooking in the back of the stove, metaphorically speaking, right?
Right. Not yet. Honestly, like, I think I'm still in the like figuring it out phase. You know, like I think we opened this restaurant very fast. You know, in some ways, in our opinion, we kind of threw it together very quickly. In some ways, so I think right now I'm just really focused on like, you know, becoming a well-oiled machine, focusing on like, okay, what is my philosophy, my food style going to be for the next 10, 20 years? So I'm really focused on that right now. And as far as what's next, you know, I think like life will work itself out. I think the stars will align. And I think whatever that opportunity is or isn't will present itself when the time comes.
That's an organic. I like it.
Yeah, like I don't put too much pressure on like what's next. You know, I think it'll naturally happen. You know.
Well, Charlie, we want to wish you the best.
Thank you.
On your culinary career, on you being a future hubby, and on your wedding next year.
Thank you.
On anything that might come up, as we know, is an ever evolving, always challenging. But I know you carry a good head above your shoulders, and you've shown that you just don't focus on the problem. You focus on trying to find a way. With that being said, Michelin Star winner, best young chef, wonderful staff, wonderful restaurant, and from me to you, I wish you nothing but success.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your time and attention. Well, thank you for having us, man.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
I know the phone is ringing, saying, "Hey, come on, talk to me. Let me interview you."
Yeah, anytime, man. Anytime. So thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. So please take a moment to visit Clover Hill and Chef Charlie's social media. We'll put it all in the description, and we'll tag him. Don't worry about it. But we want you to take all that you heard here and everything that Chef Charlie was kind enough to share, and we want you to think about that. Peace.
Thank you.